Disrespect is rarely about the words that are spoken. It is about the invisible battle for status taking place beneath every interaction. Most people believe that disrespect is a personal attack against their value, but powerful people understand a different truth. Every insult, every interruption, every act of dismissal is often a test. People are constantly measuring the emotional strength of those around them. They want to know who is easily controlled, who can be manipulated, and who remains steady under pressure. The moment you react impulsively, you answer that question for them. You reveal that your emotions can be pulled like strings. This is why the first principle of power is not to defend your pride immediately, but to protect your self-control. Robert Greene often emphasizes that power belongs to those who understand human nature rather than those who merely fight against it. Human beings instinctively probe for weakness. Sometimes they do it consciously, but more often they do it without realizing it. A sarcastic remark, a dismissive glance, or an attempt to undermine your opinion may have less to do with hatred than with curiosity. They are observing how stable you are under pressure. If your confidence depends on constant approval, they have already found your weakness. Think about history's greatest leaders, generals, and rulers. They were surrounded by critics, rivals, and enemies. If they had responded emotionally to every insult, they would have spent their entire lives fighting meaningless battles. Instead, they learned to separate their identity from the opinions of others. They understood that respect cannot be demanded through anger. It is earned through consistency, discipline, and calm authority. The average person mistakes loudness for strength. They believe raising their voice proves confidence. In reality, uncontrolled emotion often exposes insecurity. A calm person in a room full of emotional people naturally attracts attention because composure is rare. When someone attempts to provoke you and fails, the balance of power quietly shifts. They expected resistance, but instead they encountered someone who could not be manipulated. That uncertainty makes them rethink their approach. This does not mean accepting disrespect or pretending it never happened. It means refusing to let another person's behavior dictate your state of mind. Powerful people choose their responses instead of allowing emotions to choose for them. They recognize that not every battle deserves immediate engagement. Sometimes the greatest display of strength is simply observing, remembering, and responding only when it serves a larger purpose. Every act of disrespect also reveals valuable information. It exposes character, intentions, insecurities, and hidden motives. While emotional people focus only on defending themselves, strategic people quietly collect data. They learn who can be trusted, who seeks attention, and who feels threatened by confidence. In this way, disrespect becomes less of an injury and more of a source of intelligence. The greatest shift occurs when you stop asking, "Why did they disrespect me?" and begin asking, "What does their behavior reveal?" That single change transforms you from a victim into an observer. Your attention moves away from wounded pride and toward understanding the dynamics of power. Once you see disrespect as a test rather than a definition of your worth, you stop reacting like someone seeking validation. You begin responding like someone who already knows their value, and that quiet certainty becomes far more intimidating than any angry outburst ever could. The greatest mistake people make after experiencing disrespect is believing they must respond immediately. The human ego craves instant justice. It wants to prove strength through quick words, sharp insults, or visible anger. Yet powerful people understand that emotional reactions rarely restore respect. More often, they hand control to the very person who provoked them. The moment someone can predict your behavior by pushing your emotions, they possess influence over you. True power begins where emotional predictability ends. Every provocation is an invitation. It asks a simple question: can I control your state of mind? Most people answer without realizing it. Their face changes, their voice rises, their judgment weakens, and they begin acting according to someone else's agenda. The person who insulted them no longer needs physical force because emotion has already become the weapon. Robert Greene often points out that the strongest individuals are those who remain masters of themselves. Before they attempt to influence others, they first learn to govern their own reactions. History repeatedly demonstrates this principle. Successful rulers, military commanders, and influential leaders were surrounded by criticism, betrayal, and public humiliation. Had they answered every insult with immediate rage, they would have exhausted themselves in endless conflicts. Instead, they developed emotional discipline. They understood that time often weakens an enemy more effectively than anger ever could. A measured response carries greater weight because it is deliberate rather than impulsive. People frequently confuse calmness with weakness. They assume that silence means fear or surrender. This misunderstanding becomes an advantage for those who possess real confidence. While others celebrate a temporary emotional victory, the composed individual quietly studies the situation. They observe patterns, motivations, and weaknesses that remain invisible to someone blinded by anger. Emotional distance creates mental clarity, and clarity produces better decisions. Imagine a chess master facing an aggressive opponent. The beginner reacts to every move with anxiety, while the master remains patient, seeing several moves ahead. Human interactions follow the same pattern. An emotional person focuses only on the current insult. A strategic person focuses on the future consequences. They understand that winning an argument is meaningless if it costs them influence, credibility, or peace of mind. Another hidden advantage of emotional control is uncertainty. People become uncomfortable when they cannot predict your reaction. If every insult receives the same calm expression, they lose confidence in their ability to manipulate you. Eventually, many stop trying altogether because the reward disappears. Your composure becomes a psychological boundary that others hesitate to cross. This does not require suppressing emotions forever. Powerful people still experience anger, disappointment, and frustration. The difference is that they refuse to let those emotions become public decisions. They allow feelings to settle before choosing their actions. In doing so, they ensure that every response serves their long-term interests rather than satisfying a temporary impulse. The person who controls their emotions controls their choices, and the person who controls their choices ultimately controls the direction of their life, regardless of how much disrespect they encounter along the way. Silence has always been misunderstood. Most people see it as surrender, hesitation, or fear. They assume that if someone does not immediately respond to disrespect, they must be weak or intimidated. But powerful people understand that silence can be one of the most effective psychological weapons. It creates uncertainty, denies satisfaction to those seeking a reaction, and allows emotions to settle before decisions are made. The strongest response is often the one that is delayed until it carries maximum impact. When someone disrespects you, they are usually expecting something in return. They anticipate anger, defensiveness, excuses, or an emotional outburst. They want proof that they have entered your mind and disturbed your inner balance. The average person gives them exactly what they want. Their face changes, their voice rises, and their judgment becomes clouded by emotion. In that instant, the disrespectful person feels powerful because they have successfully influenced another human being. Powerful individuals refuse to provide that satisfaction. They understand that denying an emotional reaction is often the first victory. Robert Greene frequently explores the idea that patience creates leverage. Those who rush are forced to reveal their intentions, while those who wait gain information. Every passing moment gives you a clearer understanding of the other person's motives, emotional state, and weaknesses. Instead of becoming consumed by the insult itself, you begin observing the person behind it. Why did they choose that moment? What insecurity were they revealing? What outcome were they hoping to achieve? These questions transform you from a victim into a strategist. Silence also changes the psychological balance of an interaction. Human beings naturally become uncomfortable with uncertainty. When someone throws an insult and receives no immediate reaction, doubt begins to replace confidence. They start questioning whether their words had any effect. They replay the conversation in their own mind, wondering if they miscalculated. Ironically, the person who intended to occupy your thoughts often becomes trapped in their own. Patience does not mean avoiding action forever. Powerful people simply refuse to let urgency dictate their decisions. They know that timing determines effectiveness. A response delivered in anger is usually forgotten as another emotional exchange. A response delivered calmly, at the right moment, after careful observation, often carries lasting consequences. Whether they choose to confront the person, distance themselves, or simply allow that individual to expose their own character over time, every action is intentional rather than impulsive. History repeatedly rewards those who mastered restraint. Great leaders, negotiators, and military commanders understood that emotional revenge often sacrifices strategic advantage. By remaining patient, they allowed opponents to become careless, overconfident, and predictable. Many enemies ultimately defeated themselves because they mistook silence for weakness and underestimated the discipline standing before them. There is another hidden strength in silence. It protects your dignity. Words spoken in anger can never be taken back. A single uncontrolled moment can damage relationships, reputations, and opportunities built over many years. Silence creates space between emotion and action. In that space, wisdom has the opportunity to replace impulse. The person who learns to wait before responding gains something far more valuable than the satisfaction of winning an argument. They gain control over themselves, since self-control is the foundation upon which lasting influence, respect, and real power are built. Respect is not created by demanding it. It is created by the standards you consistently enforce. Many people believe that respect comes from being liked, accepted, or constantly available for others. They try to avoid conflict, overlook repeated insults, and tolerate behavior that slowly erodes their dignity. In the beginning, they believe they are being kind and understanding. Over time, however, people interpret the absence of boundaries as permission rather than generosity. This is one of the harshest realities of human nature. Others often treat you according to the limits you establish, not according to the value you secretly believe you possess. Powerful people understand that boundaries are silent declarations of self-respect. They do not constantly announce them, threaten others, or seek approval for having them. Instead, they demonstrate them through calm, consistent action. If someone repeatedly disrespects their time, they reduce access. If someone continually undermines them, they create distance. If someone refuses to treat them with basic respect, they stop investing energy in that relationship. There is no dramatic confrontation, no emotional speech, and no desperate attempt to change another person. There is only a clear decision followed by consistent behavior. Robert Greene often emphasizes that people learn from patterns, not promises. Words are easy to ignore, but repeated actions create lasting impressions. You can tell someone 100 times that you deserve respect, yet if you continue accepting disrespect without consequence, your actions cancel your words. On the other hand, when you quietly remove your attention, your trust, or your presence after someone crosses an important line, you communicate a message far more powerful than any argument. People quickly recognize that your standards are real because they carry consequences. Consistency is what transforms boundaries into authority. Many individuals establish limits only when they are angry. After calming down, they return to the same unhealthy patterns, teaching others that their boundaries are temporary and negotiable. Powerful people avoid this mistake. Their standards remain the same whether they are praised or criticized, respected or challenged. This predictability creates stability, and stability earns trust as well as respect. Another important truth is that boundaries protect your energy. Every unnecessary argument, every attempt to convince disrespectful people to value you, and every emotional conflict consumes time that could be invested in personal growth. Powerful individuals understand that attention is one of their greatest resources. They refuse to waste it on people who repeatedly demonstrate a lack of character. Instead of trying to win everyone's approval, they invest in environments and relationships where mutual respect already exists. There will always be people who dislike your boundaries because those boundaries prevent them from taking advantage of you. They may call you cold, arrogant, distant, or difficult. Powerful people do not fear these labels because they understand where they come from. Often, the people most upset by your limits are the ones who benefited when you had none. Their frustration is not evidence that your boundaries are wrong. It is evidence that your behavior has changed. The strongest boundaries are rarely loud. They do not rely on threats or constant explanations. They are reflected in the quiet confidence to walk away from disrespect, to protect your values without guilt, and to remain consistent even when it is uncomfortable. Over time, people begin to understand that access to your time, attention, and trust is earned rather than guaranteed. That realization naturally changes how they approach you because true respect grows from consistent actions far more than persuasive words. The greatest difference between ordinary people and powerful people is not intelligence, strength, or even confidence. It is the ability to think strategically when everyone else is reacting emotionally. Disrespect has a unique way of awakening the ego. It convinces you that your dignity depends on an immediate response, that silence means defeat, and that every insult must be answered. But powerful people understand that ego is often the enemy of influence. The person who acts out of wounded pride usually sacrifices long-term advantage for short-term emotional satisfaction. Strategy, on the other hand, asks a different question. Not how to win this moment, but how to win the larger game. Robert Greene frequently explains that human interactions resemble an invisible battlefield where perception matters as much as reality. Those who allow their emotions to dictate their actions become predictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate because others know exactly which buttons to press. A strategic person breaks this pattern. They refuse to reveal their intentions too early. They understand that mystery creates uncertainty, and uncertainty shifts power. Instead of rushing into conflict, they observe, calculate, and wait for the moment when their response will have the greatest effect. Most disrespect is designed to provoke, not to communicate. The goal is often to pull you into an emotional contest where rational thinking disappears. Once you enter that contest, you begin fighting on your opponent's terms instead of your own. Powerful people recognize this trap immediately. Rather than asking, how can I prove them wrong? They ask, what outcome serves my future? That single shift changes everything. Suddenly, the focus is no longer on protecting pride, but on protecting purpose. Strategy also requires understanding motives instead of merely reacting to behavior. Every disrespectful action has a reason behind it. Sometimes it comes from jealousy, sometimes insecurity, sometimes competition, and sometimes a desire for attention. If you respond only to the surface, you miss the deeper dynamics at work. Powerful individuals study people carefully. They know that understanding another person's motivations provides more leverage than defeating them in a verbal argument. Knowledge creates options, while emotional reactions often eliminate them. Another characteristic of strategic thinking is selective engagement. Powerful people know that not every battle deserves their energy. Some conflicts offer no reward except wasted time and unnecessary stress. Walking away from these situations is not cowardice, it is disciplined resource management. Your attention, reputation, and emotional stability are valuable assets. Spending them on meaningless disputes weakens your position over time. Choosing where to invest your energy is one of the clearest signs of maturity and influence. When action finally becomes necessary, it is precise rather than explosive. Strategic people do not seek revenge simply to satisfy their emotions. They seek outcomes that reinforce their values, protect their position, and discourage future disrespect. Sometimes that means a calm conversation. Sometimes it means quietly withdrawing trust. Sometimes it means allowing someone to experience the natural consequences of their own behavior. Whatever the response, it is measured and intentional rather than impulsive. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of strategy is patience. The ego demands immediate victory, but strategy understands that timing multiplies effectiveness. A response delivered at the right moment often carries far more weight than one delivered in anger. By remaining composed, gathering information, and refusing to become emotionally predictable, powerful people transform disrespect from a personal insult into an opportunity to strengthen their position. They know that influence is not built through loud displays of pride, but through disciplined decisions that consistently place reason above ego and long-term power above temporary emotional satisfaction. Real power is never announced. It is recognized. The people who possess the greatest influence rarely spend their time convincing others that they are important. They do not demand respect with threats, loud voices, or displays of anger. Instead, they carry themselves with a quiet confidence that makes others naturally reconsider how they behave around them. This is the highest form of power. It does not force obedience through fear alone. It creates caution through reputation. People think twice before crossing someone whose actions consistently demonstrate strength, discipline, and self-control. Most individuals believe respect comes from winning arguments or dominating conversations. They imagine that if they can always have the last word, they will appear strong. In reality, this constant need to prove oneself often reveals insecurity. Powerful people have little interest in proving their worth because they already know it. Their confidence is internal rather than dependent on public approval. They understand that every unnecessary argument drains energy and weakens focus. Instead of competing for attention, they invest their time in developing skills, building influence, and achieving results that speak louder than any speech. Robert Greene often explores the idea that reputation is one of the greatest sources of power. Reputation is built over time through repeated behavior. If you become known as someone who remains calm under pressure, keeps promises, protects boundaries, and refuses to be manipulated, people begin adjusting their behavior before they even approach you. They understand that emotional games, insults, and attempts at intimidation are unlikely to succeed. Your reputation begins working on your behalf long before you enter the room. Another important lesson is that powerful people never make themselves too available. Scarcity increases value in every area of life. When your attention, time, and approval are given away freely to everyone, they gradually lose significance. But when people understand that access to you must be earned through mutual respect and honesty, they become far more careful in how they treat you. This does not mean becoming arrogant or emotionally distant. It means recognizing that your energy is valuable and refusing to waste it on those who repeatedly disrespect it. Influence also grows through consistency. Anyone can appear confident for a single day or remain calm in one difficult conversation. The true test comes when challenges continue. Powerful individuals respond with the same discipline regardless of the situation. They are respectful when respected and composed when challenged. This consistency creates trust because others know exactly what to expect. Predictability in values, rather than predictability in emotions, becomes the foundation of lasting authority. There will always be people who mistake keenness for weakness or patience for fear. They may believe your silence gives them permission to continue disrespecting you. However, truly powerful people know the difference between patience and passivity. They are willing to forgive honest mistakes, but they never allow repeated disrespect to become a permanent pattern. When action is required, they take it decisively, calmly, and without unnecessary emotion. Their response is firm enough to protect their dignity while controlled enough to preserve their reputation. Ultimately, the strongest individuals do not spend their lives chasing respect because they understand that genuine respect cannot be demanded. It is earned through character, discipline, emotional control, and unwavering standards. Over time, these qualities create an invisible presence that others immediately recognize. People begin choosing their words more carefully, treating you with greater consideration, and thinking twice before attempting to test your limits. They do so not because they fear loud reactions or dramatic displays of anger, but because they recognize the quiet strength of someone who has mastered themselves. In the end, the highest form of power is not controlling other people. It is becoming so disciplined, self-respecting, and emotionally unshakable that your very presence encourages others to show you the respect they might deny to everyone else.